Hello, friends and family, soul family. This is Sophia, and this is my beautiful friend, Campagna. She is going to join me today for Goddess Talks for my second episode. A little background, I'll let her kind of introduce herself in a second, but we already have these conversations when we're hanging out anyway. We're already having these beautiful, spiritual, expansive conversations. So we felt like it would be fun to have some other people check into the conversation that we were basically already having anyway. Mm-hmm. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself if you want to?
Yeah, so I live here in Salt Lake as well. Originally I'm from the East Coast, and I think that my connection to the spiritual world started really young, like yourself, mm-hmm. and I was really fortunate to be raised in a home where this was embraced. Astrology was almost taught like religion, and tarot was something that I was around from the time I was a small child. And what I love about that spiritual realm is it can affect you with whoever you want to be in whatever path you are on. You know, whether you want to become the next CEO or you want to go meditate on a mountaintop for, 6 hours. It's for everybody. And
for real.
Yeah. And then that's really how I've, chosen to live my life, is to surround myself with people who raise my vibration. So by trade, I'm a recruiter and a network marketer, and my team name for my network marketing company is Team Aligned Life, and it's about creating a life of full alignment.
Right.
And what that means to me.
What that looks like for you.
Yeah, exactly. And what that means to everybody. So I'm all about bringing the right energy into my world. So when I met Anna, that was somebody that I wanted to bring into my aligned life.
Yes, yeah. That makes
not necessarily my team, but my life.
Yeah. Right. And to be clear, we're on each other's spiritual team, but we're not involved in each other's business life whatsoever. And one thing that's interesting, I was raised quite opposite. I was raised in a very organized religion where astrology and tarot were not only not taught, but even like kind of the hint of them was all, potentially dark or dangerous or not thought of as a positive thing. So I was definitely not raised around that. And yet I think one of the beautiful things that we're coming to realize the more that we explore our friendship is how similar we are inwardly, in spite of the fact that we were raised so differently, how many shared frequencies we probably had through that entire process. Mm-hmm. So that kind of goes to show what this whole life experience is about, is that oftentimes where you might think someone fits in a different box than you might be a whole lot more alike than you thought you were. And by, later in life, we kind of find ourselves in the same place in spite of having a completely different set of circumstances that brought us into that. So, in any case, what we are going to talk about today, we were here hanging out anyway. I'm going to show you guys this beautiful gift.
Oh, yeah. Where is it?
It's right over here. Oh. So, one of the gifts that, when Kat first reached out to me, it was in regards to some of the oracle work I do, and we wound up, just being instant, very, very obvious friends. And one of the things that she took me to for the first time, or encouraged me to go to for the first time, was the Gem Fair here in Salt Lake City. And I've always been hesitant to go because, like I knew I would be like a kid in a candy store. I totally went crazy.
You did well. I know. You did well.
I bought too much. But that's okay. But she had me pick out some stones while I was there, and dragon blood stone is really important to me. It's really powerful vibration, and it happens to be one that was really profoundly standing out for me that day. And so we picked out the beads, and she beaded them for me today. So before we get into our subject matter, I just want to show you guys this incredible gift. I just not only got to be part of picking, but it was made for me, and then she also let me help do some of the beading so that I could be part of my own creation. So look at this gorgeous dragon bloodstone. These three on the end on each side are tiger's eye. They're so pretty.
Yeah, you picked out some really good stones too, and I actually had Anna hold on to them for a while to say.
Oh yeah, I've been meditating.
Yeah, just to put her energy into them and to say, what do you want these to be? And I love. She picked red nylon bead cord which is really strong, but also I think just really, they turned out really pretty.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And look how well it fits in with everything else that you're wearing too.
It's it has a very grounding energy for me. It's why I chose a red cord. I was born with all of my upper chakras kind of wide open, and really a huge part of my soul initiation in this life is really connecting to those lower earthy chakras. And so I chose the red because that's a huge part of what this is for me, is helping to empower my more material aspect. So while we were talking today, and we were talking about, some personal stuff that has been going on in my life, and she was shuffling her deck. Incidentally, I had brought my deck over here to hopefully do some stuff with my deck, and she had pulled out her deck, and we were just sitting there talking, and 3 cards jumped out of the deck that could not have been much more perfect for what we were talking about in that moment. And a couple minutes later, I was talking to her about potentially doing these conversations with me, and a card jumped out. And I had already thought that we would just pull out a card at random. And in this particular case, it seems like one jumped out at us that wanted to be the topic of our conversation today.
Yeah.
Could it have been much more obvious?
I know. And that's what I love about tarot is the cards, they tell you what you already know, but they also tell you what you already know that you need to hear again. And
or that you maybe, like, on some level knew you needed to hear, but you needed to hear it still. You still needed it to be said so that you can have that validation.
Or in a way that you could understand it.
Right.
And my deck is the Shadowscapes deck, so it's Rider-Waite, but with some different artwork. And the Fool jumped out. So I'll just give you guys a look at what that card looks like for those of you who are familiar with tarot.
Oh my gosh, she is so, this Fool is so absolutely beautiful.
She's gorgeous. Yeah.
So for purposes, we're not doing a full reading today. We're going to talk about the energetics that this particular card speaks to us. And I also pulled out, while I really heavily resonate with tarot, I also do a lot with oracle cards. And one of my favorite cards in the deck is the equivalent of the Fool, and this one is called the Sacred Fool. It's kind of the equivalent. So we're going to kind of talk about both of these cards today. Hi, Simon. It's beautiful to hear from you. But we're going to talk about what that energetic means to us. So first, I'd like to ask you what the Fool as a whole, what that embodiment.
Yeah.
When you see that.
Well, I think originally in the Rider-Waite deck, it's usually a man that is about to take a step off the cliff, and behind him he has this whole other life, and there's a story that goes along with that. And I think that what we were kind of chatting about is sometimes people look at this as a negative, like you are a fool, but that's not necessarily what this means. And I love April as a whole because this is our new year starts in April, the spiritual world.
The astrological new year, yeah.
And April Fool's Day is always not something I've really been a fan of because I feel like it makes some kind of distrust, but the Fool in itself has such a powerful background because it can mean lots of new things. It can mean new beginnings and new adventures. It can also, sometimes when I pull this card, it can speak to somebody's self-doubt that they're having, that they just need to trust that they know the right way that they're going, which the Fool does. The Fool is about to take a step into the unknown, but it's all, everything is laid out there. So I think that it can mean so much in different contexts, and I would usually like to look at what I've pulled around it.
For sure.
Yeah, to understand. So in this situation, with kind of what we were talking about, I think there is a little bit of an element of, trusting yourself and trusting your intuition that I think was kind of speaking to you when we were kind of chatting.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of just my overview. But
and not even the
time to wake up.
It's time to wake up. No. So basically, for me, the newness or the self-trust that it kind of nurtures is that if I did make a mistake, it was a mistake for me to learn from. So there was a perfection in the mistake even. There's a perfection in everything that got me to where I'm at. So I don't have to feel foolish even if I'm having a really profound learning experience because of the things that I've gone through.
Yep. Oh, that's great.
Another thing that really for me stands out about the Fool, whether it be the Sacred Fool in the Rider-Waite deck, or at least in this deck, it is 0. The number is 4. And 0 is a very, very sacred, sacred number. It is the full circle. Things have come full circle. You're not just at the end of a cycle. You're at the beginning of a new cycle. So it's the wrapping up of certain things that need to be let go so that you can step into a new cycle. This is a totally new spring-like, a spring-like energy. And additionally, I think that for me, especially when I'm working with my oracle cards, you can see that she's wearing the dunce hat, and yet she's no dunce. She is no fool, but she's completely cool with people thinking she is. She's completely okay with it, the fact that some people might think she's crazy. She's completely okay with the fact that some people might not resonate with her exact way of being, but that's who she is, and that's okay. That's who he is. That's who they are. That's who that person is, and they're coming to a place of being willing to be other people's fool so that they can be completely true and authentic to who they are personally. So for me, I resonate heavily with this one because I had, good almost 30 years of my life where I was just telling Kat when I first got here that until I was about 27 or 28 years old, maybe even 29, almost no one in my life knew how spiritual I was, in spite of the fact that I was as spiritual as I am now. It was just, I had a very select group of friends that I opened up that aspect of myself to. Even when I was in a romantic relationship, I usually shared different things with that person, and then I'd have my friends that I went and did oracle readings with, or that I went and had these deep spiritual experiences with. And I realize now that it's because it was so precious to me. It was too precious to put it out there and make myself that vulnerable to people. And I also realized that once I did, I was going to get exactly the reactions I have gotten. I have had people turn their backs on me. I've had people call me crazy. I've had people call me all sorts of things. I've had people assume that I'm trying to convert them to something, which is so silly because I'm like, if you consider yourself something, I'm converting you to yourself. You are your own savior. So sorry to be the bearer of the bad news. I'm not trying to
be converted to
that. Right? I'll convert you to yourself. And literally anyone that works with me would find that every single time I'm working with them, I'm turning them back towards their own inner guide. Even if it's like, oh my gosh, I've learned so much from you. It's like, yeah, but you found me. You're the one who drew this experience into your field, which means always, first and foremost, you are your primary teacher. And you can love and honor other people for teaching you along the process, but in the process, a lot of the greatest thinkers, the greatest, most revolutionary minds throughout all of history have almost always seemed foolish to many of the people around them. And it was their lack of needing other people's approval that made it so that they could make such a huge, pronounced impact. Now, a huge difference between where I am now versus a few years ago is I don't give a crap if people accept me anymore. I don't need people's acceptance. I don't need people to like me. But I love myself enough to expect respect. And I do draw a line when people disrespect me. And that's not because I need their approval. That's not because I care if they think I'm foolish. That's because I love me enough to finally draw enough healthy boundaries in my life to say, you don't get to disrespect me, but you also don't have to agree with me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The sacred fool, being a friend with another sacred fool, is a partnership, a friendship where you genuinely and deeply seek to understand one another with the willingness to leave that conversation disagreeing.
And this is a choice. That's what I love about this card is it's the decision to make that step to move forward. It's the intention. It's why I reached out to you in the first place, because my experience wanted to have Anna's experience, intertwined. And yeah, exactly. And this is the thing that so many of us have a hard time with, is that you don't have to spend time with people that put you out of alignment. I mean, sometimes we do. Sometimes there's no way to get around it. But if you have the opportunity to spend time with somebody who is raising your vibration, then choose that. Choose that experience. Take that step, even if you are stepping into what you don't know, the unknown.
Well, and if people around you might judge that decision, there's a good chance that if people around you are judging your decision, that's a really heartfelt decision, it's a really right decision for you, there's a good chance that you set that opportunity up for your spirit to have an initiation to choose self-love.
Yeah.
So
which is such a hard lesson.
It is a hard lesson,
Yeah.
but it's not them setting you up for
Right.
that lesson. It's you setting you up for that lesson. And you setting yourself up for the opportunity to say, just because I love myself enough to not put myself in a situation that's going to lower my vibration doesn't mean I don't love you.
Mm-hmm.
I still love you. I just love you not by your conditions. I love you.
Unconditional love. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, that's a phrase that I feel like it's said so often that sometimes the meaning is lost out of it. But what you just said, when we put conditions on our relationship, and that can be conditions with ourselves too.
Right. Most of the time it is, even if we think we're projecting it onto someone else.
Yeah, I mean that's really where we get knocked out of our full alignment. So it's a phrase that we say too much and not enough.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the very first things that I was saying to Kat when I got here today is that I wanted to ask something of her, but that I wanted her to feel completely safe to say no,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to establish right from the beginning of the conversation that I recognize that one of my soul initiations in this life has been learning how to say no and when to say no and when that's a safe space for me to say no. Or to create that safe space for myself to say no. And so when I'm asking something of someone else, it might be an opportunity for them to have that self-love enough to say, I can support you in other ways, but I can't support you this way. Mm-hmm. And that will create a greater sense of trust actually in our relationship too. When I would do that for her and she would do that for me, we will both know that there's a certain level of authenticity that's coming to the table.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think that, both industries I work in involve, explaining new opportunities to people. And something that I try to teach is honoring when somebody's not ready for a specific experience.
Oh, for sure.
And it's hard, though, because when you have this thing in your life that you love, that's changed your life, of course you want everybody to partake in it, but everybody has their different experiences at different speeds. And it's the most difficult thing is when you love something so much and you don't understand why somebody else doesn't want to partake in it.
But you also have to receive that, like a divine computer receiver, they can only receive that which they're capable of receiving at that time.
Yes. Yeah, my sister sent me a quote the other day, to just kind of tangentially related that it's people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves too.
That is so perfect.
Yeah, and I think that the thing about that too is we're all here to influence each other's life experiences and to hopefully add value. So,
well, you made a really valid point when we were here talking a few minutes ago. You were talking about one of your friends who you would want to give a lesson to, but you recognize they're not ready for that lesson.
Right.
And how you
Right.
recognize that is you said, could I have gone and given this lesson to myself at 24? Mm-hmm. So you weren't saying it from some judgmental place like, I'm good and this person's bad,
Right.
but more a recognition that the woman you are today is not the same woman as the woman that you were a few years ago. And had you had you tried to have the same conversation with that young woman, it just wouldn't have been the same conversation. It simply wouldn't. It would be a different reality.
And I don't think I could have received it because I wasn't ready.
So
to
thus
meet
the
myself.
conversation itself would be different.
It's true.
It just wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
So,
what else about her though? What's different about the Sacred Fool in your deck rather than
well, the
right
Sacred Fool the Sacred Fool is just about, I think they're very much the same card, actually. Okay. They're very much about new beginnings. Obviously, this isn't the 0 card. It's number 40 in the Sacred Fool deck, or in the Sacred Rebels deck. But it is all about new beginnings. It's about a new opportunity coming that's very unapologetic in, like, I don't need to ask someone's permission for a new opportunity. If something is going to make my heart sing, I don't need 7 people to validate it first to see if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to take steps forward unapologetically, knowing that there are people who might, most likely, not just might, most likely part of your initiation is that people that matter to you are most likely going to be triggered by your decision to own yourself so completely. And in doing that, it might be a little bit frightening to some people, but it is also extremely empowering, and it's kind of incredible the amount of influx of energetics that come from so many different areas, that all of this new energy grows into something that's really dynamic and really powerful that can only be stopped by you. All of the other people that are getting triggered can't stop your dynamic growth. Only you can by placing weight in their opinions.
You just said something too that I love when we pick up on other things. That's like, how did you know that? So I did a training this year for the new year being April, New Year being spring. That
New Year being spring,
like
March 21st.
Yeah, exactly. That defines. So the goal is to pick a few words to define your year, and the number one word for me was unapologetic. Because so you just totally picked that up, and that's really it.
Hey, then this was the perfect card to pick for our first conversation because unapologetic is a huge word that just vibrates very heavily for me with the Sacred Fool. It's even recognizing that you may have made mistakes, and even being like, if I make a mistake that hurts you, I'm going to apologize for that.
Right.
But I can also maybe see what the lesson was that we were setting up for ourselves, and see the divine beauty in the lesson, in spite of still, like, I'm sorry it hurt your feelings. I hate that we had to learn this way, but I'm still so glad that we could learn this lesson.
Yeah, and like the way that it applies to me is I'm unapologetic about who I am. You know, I am growing, I am learning, I am always striving to be the best version of myself. But if there are people that triggers, or that, you know, that doesn't vibe with them, I'm unapologetic about that, because I'm not going to change who I am to fit the mold of what somebody else wants.
Right.
And that's how I have chosen to take this year. And it's hard, but
I think that this is probably your year of the Sacred Fool then.
Yep.
And that's, you know, don't let this card ever scare you. This is truly one of my favorite cards. It usually makes sense of whatever it is that's already going on in my life. It's like, oh, okay, I can understand now what's actually happening currently with the energetic. So, in any case.
And mine has a little fox with it.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see that, but I love that about this deck, that there's just a little fox that's hanging out.
Very, very.
But I think that's great. And I think that we focus so much on, you know, the new year being January, that, you know, the new year, for me, I choose to be spring, but you can take any phase of your life and make that your new beginning. And you don't have to subscribe to just a time of the year. So your season of the Fool can come at a different time too.
Well, right, and it can. We have different cycles that we go through. Every single day is a cycle. Every single morning you have the energetic of spring, and every single night you have the energetic of winter. And every single week you have the energetic of spring in Monday, and you have the energetic of winter in Sunday. And I mean, there are so many different ways to utilize this energetic with a sense of wisdom and discernment, so that you can do so unapologetically and feel a sense of empowerment as you step into that next phase of who you are.
I love that. I think that that's probably a great place to end.
Perfect.
What do you think?
I think that's perfect. I can pretty much guarantee you that this won't be the last time that she's on here. She's willing to come back for another. Well, yes. I guess in this case, we're in her house.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
She's willing to have me
some
back.
Giant tarot cards.
Yeah, it's beautiful, the Sun card. All right, we love you all very much, and wishing you a very enlightening springtime. Bye-bye.
Bye.